Hello and welcome to episode 94 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is June 4th, 2018. I am Rollo McFlugel and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both at McFlugel.com. The show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/94. You'll be able to find links to things we talk about, as well as ways to follow us on social media and check out our sponsor, libertymugs.com, where we sell, guess what? Liberty mug themes. Yeah, obviously. Liberty-themed mugs. I was distracted by me trying to say, like, the show notes page where you'll find, because that you'll twists my tongue every time. I think I stumble over it every single episode that we have. So, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Slappy, and he's going to introduce our episode topic.
Thank you for that introduction.
You're welcome.
I
struggled through it.
That was rough. Thanks, everyone, for listening to us today. I'm Slappy Jones. Welcome to the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today, there was some big news, I guess. Rollo texted me during the day about the cake decision at the Supreme Court. And so, obviously, libertarians everywhere and Gary Johnson voters are pretty upset. The court sided with Masterpiece Cakeshop in saying that he didn't have to bake that cake. Or did they? So, you know, usually when we hear about Supreme Court decisions, they're not always what they sound like. So when Rollo sent me the text, I went right to the Drudge Report, and the headline said something like, I don't remember exactly what it said, but it said something like, Baker doesn't have to bake cake, and had a big rainbow cake on there. And so it sounds like it's a victory for liberty. And, you know, the owner of the cake shop isn't forced to do something he doesn't want to do. It's his property. He can do what he wants. But with most cases, it's worth reading the decision. And so the decision's long. It's 59 pages, but I read about a third of it or so, and including the summary in the beginning, which I'm going to read right now, the first paragraph of the decision. So this is the case of Masterpiece Cakeshop Limited versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission. It says, Masterpiece Cakeshop is a Colorado bakery owned and operated by Jack Phillips, an expert baker and devout Christian. In 2012, he told a same-sex couple that he would not create a cake for their wedding celebration because of his religious opposition to same-sex marriages that Colorado did not then recognize, but that he would sell them other baked goods, for example, birthday cakes. The couple filed a charge with the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, pursuant to the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act, which prohibits, as relevant here, discrimination based on sexual orientation in a place of business engaged in any sales to the public and any place offering services to the public. Under CADA's administrative review system, the Colorado Civil Rights Division first found probable cause for a violation and referred the case to the commission. The commission then referred the case for a formal hearing before a state administrative law judge, ALJ, who ruled in the couple's favor. In doing so, the ALJ rejected Phillips' First Amendment claims that requiring him to create a cake for a same-sex wedding would violate his right to free speech by compelling him to exercise his artistic talents to express a message with which he disagreed and would violate his right to the free exercise of religion. Both the Commission and the Colorado Court of Appeals held the Commission's actions in this case violated the Free Exercise Clause. End quote. So, Rollo, your thoughts on this one?
So, what's disappointing to me about all of this, and I guess the court got it right. I don't want to, completely poo-poo what they're doing. But the problem for me is, this shouldn't be about free speech, because I think we've said it before on this podcast several times, is that there really is no right to free speech outside of what the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says. But they're just kind of saying what the government can't do to you. But if you look at actual rights, what we have independent of any government, it's all property rights. And that's what's in play here. What really should be in play here is, do you have the right to someone else's labor? In other words, is slavery legitimate?
Right. I want to cut you off real quick because I know there's some people who, let's say there's some libertarians who may disagree with some of that. There's a lot of libertarians who really like the Constitution. And so tell me a little more about that. You're saying there is no right to free speech. Like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean there's no right to free speech?
Well, I'll say it this way. The right to free speech, as the First Amendment says, is that the government can't limit your free speech. That does not mean that you may come into my house and shout obscenities to me.
Right, because you're the property owner there. And you would set the rules in your house. I
set the rules. Just like the owner of a bakery will set the rules on what cakes he's going to bake and what he's going to decorate and who he's going to sell them to. Because it's his property. I mean, the action of baking a cake is he's taking physical goods, mixing his labor with it, and creating something. So he's doing some work, and he's doing that in exchange for money or something that he wants from someone else. So to compel someone to do labor against their will is slavery. So,
right.
When you look at it that way, it makes a stronger case that you shouldn't force someone like this baker to do something against his will. And further,
right, I don't want to take this off the rails too early because I know you just had another point to make and I cut you off. Mm-hmm. But you'll hear this from the commies out there. So what about an employer? He forces you to do things all the time that you don't want to do.
Well, not really. I mean,
Is that slavery?
No, because I can leave the job if I want to. I can go work somewhere else. There's no gun to my head. If the state were to compel Jack Phillips to bake the cake, they would be threatening violence against him. The employee-employer relationship, there's no threat of violence behind it. It's a voluntary agreement that either party, outside of what any laws governments might have, should have the right to be able to terminate that agreement at any point for any reason.
I think we could look at property rights again. You have a business owner who, whether it was his own investment or he took loans or whatever he did to start this business, he then asked people if they want to work for him in exchange for money, usually. And that's a voluntary agreement there on both parties. And the property owner is the guy who owns the business, and he sets the rules. And he says, I will pay you X if you do this, and you can choose to accept that or not.
Right, and it's the same thing. There's really no difference between that and baking a cake. You could say that the client walking into the bakery and asking, or the potential client walking into the bakery and asking for him to bake the cake is like the employer. And if he tries to set rules that the employee, the baker, doesn't agree with, then the transaction isn't going to go through.
Right.
So I think changing topics a little bit. An important thing that was mentioned in what you read from the opinion by the court, because so many people out there are making this as like bigotry just against the gay couple, that this guy and anyone else, or specifically this guy, because this is a specific case with specific circumstances, that this guy did not bake this cake for the gay couple because he does not like gay people, which they explicitly say that he was willing to sell them other baked goods, just not a wedding cake that was explicitly recognizing and what he felt would be giving his approval to, his implicit approval to what they were doing. So I think that's really important. And I think that the court probably, the Supreme Court probably, made reference to that for good reason. Although, of course, no one reads these things, so and it ends up really not mattering. But that should fly in the face of people who say that whenever something like this happens, because there's been other situations, other cases where someone refuses to do business with someone asking them to participate in some way in like a gay marriage or something that they have religious objections to. And they always make it out to be that there's hatred involved and that they just don't like these people. Where, I mean, what if they did come in? I'm sure there's been gay people walk into that bakery before and ask to buy other baked goods, and they've served them. Because if he has a history of, figuring out if someone's gay and then not selling them his products, then he would have been in the news a long time ago.
Right.
And it was like, what was the pizza shop? I forget where it was. This was a few years ago, where it was a small town somewhere, and some reporter went to go do a story about this pizza shop. I think it was like very well liked in the little town.
It was in Indiana or something.
Yeah, and they had a lot of religious stuff decorating their pizza shop. And so I guess the reporter figured that would be a good topic to ask about. And they said, well, you are Christian people. Would you cater a gay wedding? And mind you, this is a pizza shop. How many weddings have you been to? And I'm sure, I don't know, people, because I remember talking about this on Twitter and stuff. And people were like, I would love to have pizza at my wedding. Okay, well, did you? If you got married, did you have pizza at your wedding? But how many?
I would have loved that too, but
sure,
I didn't.
Yeah, I'm sure the other half of you would have loved that. Maybe. I mean,
maybe, but we didn't.
Right.
And that was an option, I guess.
Mm-hmm. If you really want that, if you really want to,
yeah,
But and they said, well, and they said, well, I mean, we don't cater weddings ever, so it would never be a situation. But I guess if it came up, then we would decline it because that goes against our religious beliefs. And to me, it was a hit piece on them, just a way to generate a lot of hullabaloo and get this report. I don't even want to call him a journalist because it's so slimy of what this reporter did. And it was just a way. I mean, I guess he or she got their 15 minutes of fame reporting on this story. And everyone flipped out, sent these people all sorts of threats and nasty stuff their way. But it's, again, if these people were bigots, do you really think that the town would put up with them? I mean, you could say that, oh, this must be a town full of hate. I don't know. I've met a lot of people in my life. I've been a lot of places. People act different. I mean, different places act differently. They have different cultures. But people don't go around hating each other. And I don't think that, especially in the year 2018, where a lot of people are out openly gay, that there's this constant fear of, just that you can't go out and do anything. Not to say that there aren't cases where they do put up with garbage they shouldn't have to, but
even so, let's say there's all these people who just hate gay people, and since that's not, I mean, it kind of seems silly to even talk about, to be honest with you, because I don't know where these people are. But let's just say they're all out there. They just hate gay people. Well, they can't get along in society anywhere because they're just hateful people. So what do they move to some town where they can all be together and hate gay people? Then they're isolated from
right.
everyone.
That'd be great.
They got rid. You know where they are. You know what they're doing. You know what to get when you go there.
Right.
And it probably wouldn't. I don't think that's a mainstream belief to really be mean to anyone. I think that one of the nice things about the market is that it kind of it's to your benefit to be nice to people.
Right. And we covered that with the case of racism last week in our episode with Conan, where we may not agree on. Sorry, my cat just jumped on my lap. We may not agree exactly on whether or not you can be a libertarian and a racist, depending on the definitions that you use. I think we
Right.
But we did agree that at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because a libertarian society is not very conducive for someone who wants to explicitly, be racist. So it works out. The market works out very well in these cases.
Right.
So another example, or an example that I want to bring up about this, something a little bit similar, is that we have our little website where we sell mugs, libertymugs.com, and we say to people, and we advertise that, hey, if you've got an idea for a mug, we'll make it and sell it to you. That does not mean that we will put anything and everything on a mug that someone asks for. If someone says something that like flies in the face of my religious beliefs, I'm not putting it on a mug and selling it to them. Or even if it's not religious, it could be any reason. I mean, if someone said, hey, can you make a mug that says screw tractors, tractors are dumb? Of course I'm not going to make that mug. Because I'm of the tractor religion.
Yeah, so all the anti-tractorites out there are going to just choose to turn this one off.
Right. And so, yeah. Well, I don't think anyone actually exists like that. So don't have to worry about that.
You'd be surprised.
Well, I don't want to live in that society. We'll have to bring Conan back on and discuss anti-tractorism.
Yeah.
Because my argument is you just can't be a human being and hate tractors. So, But can you imagine if someone? All right, so we say that we'll put what you want on a mug, and someone comes along and says, like, can you make a mug that says communism rules? And we say no. Clear. This is not despite how some people want to strawman us. Being a libertarian is not our religion. So we can't even say that if we were to go along the lines of the free speech thing and religious freedom, we couldn't say that it would violate our First Amendment rights because of our free exercise of religion. It would have to be the property rights. We're just saying that, if you wanted to do the free speech thing, say, well, we can put on our mugs what we want, but again, that's still just property rights. I don't think anyone in their right mind would sit there and say, no, that site that sells libertarian mugs should be forced to make a pro-communism mug. Like, all these people on Twitter flipping out about this court decision, I don't think any of them would say, yeah, I think that they should be forced to do that. Regardless of whether or not there's another place where they can get a mug. Even though there are many, many places they can do that. And would be willing to do that. So it's just such an easy thing to get people worked up about that it's gay people.
Yep.
And since there's a history of discrimination, that it's such an easy target. And again, it's what the civil rights, it's what the Supreme Court was drilling on about. Was they were saying that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission was basically being jerks to this guy, because it's easy. It's easy to rip on someone's religion now, especially. It's both sides. I mean, it's easy for the left today to rip on Christianity, and it's easy for a lot of people like conservative and right wingers to rip on Islam.
Yeah, I don't think I'm changing subjects here, but I want to kind of read this one sentence of the decision. It was a couple pages down, and it kind of highlights why it's dangerous to look to the Constitution, because here we are talking about property rights. And this quote says, "The freedoms asserted here are both freedom of speech and the free exercise of religion. The free speech aspect of this case is difficult, for few persons would have seen a beautiful wedding cake, or for few persons who have seen a beautiful wedding cake might have thought of its creation as an exercise of protected speech." So that kind of throws out the speech. I mean, he basically says, this is Justice Kennedy writing this, who was a Reagan appointee, I believe. But he's saying the speech here is kind of not that obvious, because when people look at a cake, they don't think, wow, that's that baker's speech. Similar to the mug scenario. I mean, if you're walking around with a mug, no one's going to say, that's Liberty Mug's free speech. They're going to see your mug. And in this case, they have the free exercise of religion, which we would not with the communist mug. So that's kind of how I wanted to wrap that in. But on top of that, they don't even decide that the property owner or the business owner can do what he wants with his property. What they're saying in this decision is that the Colorado Civil, what are they called? Colorado Civil Rights
Commission, I think.
Commission, Civil Rights Commission, was not neutral toward religion. And they cited 3 other cases where people ordered anti-gay cakes, or whatever they said. That's what they called it. Where they put, people asked for cakes that were basically anti-gay marriage. And the baker refused to bake them, and the commission upheld that. And in this case, the commission said, no, you have to bake that. And so they were showing inconsistency and not being neutral toward religion. And that's what the decision says here. It does not say you can do what you want with your property. It doesn't even say or rule out that this could be decided differently in the future. So before we have a big victory over this, the property rights victory, read the decision. It's not as great as people are probably thinking. And that's the danger of basing rights on a constitution, because nowhere in here do they mention the guy's property rights.
Right. And Bob Murphy had a great tweet that I'll read that we kind of said already, but I think it's worth. He put it very well. Quote, I can't speak to constitutional law, but in libertarian theory, the gay wedding cake issue has nothing to do with religious liberty. It's about people using their property as they see fit. ABC can fire Roseanne. That's not about free speech. And a baker can refrain from a cake. So that's good because he hit both sides of it. Is that there's so many people on the right that are upset that ABC would, fire Roseanne from a show and cancel it because they say, oh, you're overreacting to what happened or whatever, or you're holding double standards against the left. And that's fine to point out that they are, and whatever. And people are fine to criticize or boycott a bakery if they want. I think in the situation like Jack Phillips and Masterpiece Cake, I think boycotting him is a little bit over the top. But you're free to do that. You're free to say that he shouldn't do that, or you disagree with it.
That's interesting.
Say that. What's that?
Well, in every transaction, there's 2 parties, right?
Right.
So why would we? And I know you're not saying this, but you're, and I think most people would agree with you. Like the guy in Florida, Hogg, wants to boycott everything.
Mm-hmm.
Boycott him. Isn't that the same exact thing, essentially, as a baker choosing not to associate with certain people or activities?
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? And you were saying this before we went on air. Isn't it interesting that people only care about one side of these transactions? That it's not about anti-discrimination. It's just that the producer can't discriminate against the employer. But no one ever cares about consumers discriminating against producers.
Right. Like, let's take pretty much the same example. Let's say there's a customer of a bakery, and he liked the bakery, gets his cakes there and his cookies and donuts or whatever. And then he finds out the owner's gay and decides not to go there. Should there be a court order that he must continue to shop there?
Right.
Or, or put anything else in there. Like, let's say he's a Christian and they find out, I don't like Christians. They're hateful people. Some people will say that. I don't want to go there. Or, they donate money to the NRA. I don't want to go there anymore. Should that company be able to say, no, he went here for 15 years and he found out I contribute to the NRA and stopped coming. He should have to shop at my place. That's absurd. Nobody would think that's okay in any way. Yet we do that to the other side of the transaction.
Right. Yeah. It's so funny that people are so that think that the boycott is such a good tool and useful tool and a good way to make their voice be heard peacefully, but they only think the boycott can go one way.
And we can look at it so many ways. I mean, even an employer-employee relationship. If an employee, for some reason, for any reason at all, doesn't want to work there, he can leave.
Mm-hmm.
Unless he has some kind of contract that says he must fulfill certain duties or whatever, which, of course, would have been voluntary.
Or and athletes can decide that they want to not play for a certain league or team, and you can get a bunch of other players to do the same thing, and it's like, wow, that's great. They're taking a stand. Whereas this is relevant now because I think Colin Kaepernick was filing a lawsuit against the NFL for collusion, saying that he should have been on a team,
right?
But teams got together and kind of blackballed him. Well, you can agree with what Colin Kaepernick was doing, but I mean, why should anyone have to hire him?
Yeah, and on that, the truth, I mean, the NFL is such a competitive league. There's a lot of money, and you'll notice their job security is not really a thing in the NFL outside of maybe a couple instances. I don't think Bill Belichick's going to get fired anytime soon. But he's like the only coach who's unfireable. Same with the players. I mean, the second you're not as good, you're gone. There's no goodwill build up in the NFL. There's 53 men on your roster, and you take the 53 best players you can get. And if Colin Kaepernick was good enough, he'd be on a team.
Right. Well, like Michael Vick got a job after serving a prison sentence for fighting dogs.
Yeah, and that was in Philadelphia, and there was a lot of. I mean, there was certainly a good amount of protest and anger over that.
But he came in and played pretty well. Yeah.
Miracle in the Meadowlands too.
Oh yeah, I love that. I watched the highlights of that game every so often.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of things that go in, and this is more a good thing to talk about because it brings up more general ideas about why people and businesses may decide one decision over another that they might not. I mean, maybe Colin Kaepernick was good enough to be. I don't even think, because I heard people talking about actually on the Peaceful Treason podcast, they were talking about this a little bit, and they were saying that Colin Kaepernick was definitely, they thought, and other people thought, that Colin Kaepernick was better than a lot of the NFL quarterbacks, not necessarily starting quarterbacks, but more backup quarterbacks, which I'm sure is the case. But teams have to decide whether or not that talent, especially for a backup quarterback, is going to be worth the baggage that comes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying that completely neutral about what agreeing with Kaepernick or not.
Well, I'll bring up another example then. Terrell Owens was an unbelievable pass catcher, great receiver. If he wasn't, there's no way teams will be taking him. He's got too much of a liability. He's, ruined locker rooms or whatever, or people say he's a selfish player. But teams are willing to take a chance on that if the production's going to be good enough.
Right. Well, I mean, Des Bryant's an example of that
yes.
right now. It's that his future's kind of in question because he is known as not the greatest teammate and causes problems. So it reaches a point where, I mean, that's what good teams do. They kind of weigh the how a team gels together as well as the individual talent. Because if guys don't get along very well, it makes it a little difficult. And that was while we're on the topic of football and the NFL, and since I want to talk about the Eagles winning the Super Bowl this year more, because that was something that people were bringing up about was how well the team got along together and how they're always on the same page. Now, obviously, you need a lot of talent to go along with that, but it just goes to show that teams are making personnel decisions not just based on, a skill rating or something. It's not just this objective thing where you say, well, this player is, we can rate these players based on their skill, and we're just going to take all the best players that we can. There's more to
there's
it.
a lot more that goes
Right.
into it for
There's
sure.
a ton that
And if you
goes
look
in.
at this, yeah, I mean, just look at this Eagles team, how many running backs they had on the team, and there were some big name running backs. Jay Ajayi, who came in the middle of the year, and what's his name from New England?
LeGarrette Blount.
LeGarrette Blount. I mean, LeGarrette Blount was here getting a lot of carries, and then they bring in Jay Ajayi. Like, that could have been a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Guys getting a lot of carries, now someone else is coming in, and they got along together. They played well. I'm sure the management talked to him before, they made that decision. I don't know if that's true or not, but either way, they got along just fine. And in the celebration, they were next to each other. They were interviewed together. I mean, they were friends. They worked together, and that goes a long way in the NFL.
Oh yeah, I mean, you look at the NHL, and you hope that goalies have, especially when there's not a clear starter, is you want goalies to be able to get along well and healthy competition. I mean, obviously, both guys want to play, get the bulk of the starts, but they got to get along. I mean, they got to sit there. I mean, the goalie's sitting there. I mean, the backup goalie is one of the best eyes in the arena to spot what's going on with the goalie. So if he's seeing something that his teammates doing on the ice, you kind of want his feedback.
And so, anyway, getting back to the
what are we talking about again?
Getting back to the point of this conversation is that employers factor in a lot more into their decisions than basically nothing. Like, I must serve everyone, or even I must hire the best person. The other factors come into it, and that's their right to do that for any reason.
And that's why it's nice to have the perspective of Austrian economics and praxeology in this, is that there is the idea of subjective value and that people have different value scales. And that even though this guy is losing business and potentially more business if he gets a lot of flack for his decision not to sell this cake to the gay couple, but he feels that his own conscience, as it relates to his religious beliefs, is more important than him making money. And, for all the people out there that I'm sure it's a lot of the same people that are flipping out about this guy not baking a cake are the same kind of people that say that people, capitalists are evil and greedy and only care about money. Well, I mean, here's a guy that's maybe putting something, and maybe he doesn't. And it could be another way. And that's the beauty of it. You don't really know. It doesn't really matter why, but he's making the business decision. It could be that, or it could be that he says, hey, most of my clientele doesn't like. I doubt that's the case.
Well, this reminds me of a book I read a long time ago. It was one of the first kind of books that got me on my way here. It was written by Bob Murphy, called The Politically Incorrect Guide to Capitalism. And it was like in the introduction or the first page, it says, are you a good capitalist? And it gives you a little question and a couple multiple choice answers. And the question was something like, who is the best hire for a secretary job? And it was like an older woman who's very conscientious, very good, will get things done. Had a couple other ones. And one of the other options was a 22-year-old, very attractive female who will bring in lots of business. And he says the answer is whoever will bring in the business, or whatever the business owner decides is best for business. And so when you're looking at it, you're like, who's the fair one to answer? But the reality is it's the subjective value. If a business owner is willing to take maybe a less talented employee, because that less talented employee will bring in more business, maybe that's the right business decision.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's
up to the individual business owner. And if they make a bad choice, like let's say that lack of skill causes problems in the business, maybe there's missed calls or messages aren't given or whatever the case is, things don't get out in time, that's going to hurt business. And that would either be a mistake on the hire or you'd have to get rid of the employee. But it's really, there is no right and wrong hire in any case. And it's all subjective up to the business owner.
Right. It's basically you make the decision and it gets tested.
Yep.
And in the field, experimentation field that is known as the marketplace, that's where it ends up being figured out whether it was a good decision or not.
We could talk about all kinds of things like nepotism laws where you can't, this comes up in public schooling a lot, but like brothers, sisters, family members of teachers can't be hired because they're showing favoritism or something. But that, of course, public schools aren't into the market. they stay open regardless. But in the private sector, that shouldn't be an issue.
Right. So I wanted to bring up another thing just about because people were commenting on this Supreme Court case today, and just it blows my mind. And we were talking, I think we were texting this back and forth today, how I think there was like a study somewhere that said that the left understands the right's arguments less than the opposite.
Right.
And regardless of whether that's true, that's just like the reaction that people had to this, people on the left, just screams of ignorance and just stupidity, or they're just, lying in their face hoping that, all the drones that follow them will support it, in which case it kind of proves the point that they don't understand what's going on as a whole. But this Scott Dworkin, who is co-founder of something called the Democratic Coalition, and he's apparently a MSNBC contributor. The guy's got 341,000 Twitter followers, and he's got the blue check mark. So he's legitimate in the sense that a lot of people know about him,
know who he is,
right? And so I don't blame him for not responding to me, since I have far fewer Twitter followers than he does. But
right now,
yes, right now. I'm sure that'll change in like a week. But he tweeted out, "I missed the part in the Bible where it says you should deny services to people because they're gay." Oh, it's not there? Didn't think so. Oh man, got us.
Zinger.
So, I mean, there's so much that you could unwrap with that. I mean, so what's he saying? He's upset that the Supreme Court, because, they're all getting it wrong what this case actually was, but they're upset that the government isn't going to force someone to bake a cake. So he's upset the government is not going to enforce slavery on certain people. He's upset that the government is not going to stick a gun in this guy's ribs and say, you bake the cake or you're getting thrown in a cage. So is he suggesting that was in the Bible? That we should do that?
Yeah, I missed that section.
Yeah, where did Jesus say in the Gospels that, do these, be kind to your neighbor, love one another, give to the poor, and if you don't do it, we'll have the government force you to do it. That's not in there. And furthermore, I mean, is he really going to try to use the Bible to reference how to treat gay people? When, like, should we use the Bible with like Sodom and Gomorrah, where a city got blown up because, they were doing some nasty stuff there? I'm not saying that the Bible's anti-gay, of course, but, if it's just ironic that that's the argument that he's making, where the same type of people flip out about other stuff in the Bible. So it's like, I don't know this. I don't follow this guy. Maybe he is a good Christian. I doubt it. But it's just, it's so ironic that they just like throw stuff up against the wall. That doesn't make any sense at all. Like that, these arguments are ridiculous. And then I think it was someone else let me click through it. Someone posted a meme. Yeah, here it is. Someone posted a meme. That's a cartoon of these two nurses drinking coffee together, and says, "So according to the Supreme Court, I can refuse to serve evangelicals." And the other nurse says, "Their desecration of Jesus offends me." And it's like, they're trying to have this gotcha thing, like, well, if they can discriminate against gay people, then I can discriminate against them for being blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, yeah, you can discriminate against anyone for any reason. I don't understand why there's this idea that you have to, like, the government has a bad program for this thing, so we got to drag everybody else down to that level. It's like with all the people who are trying to have gun control, and I saw a tweet or something today where it was going, he's rattled through all these things that he needed to do in order to buy his 4-year-old daughter cough syrup. And he's like, thanks, NRA, for making it so that you aren't buying a gun isn't held to the same standards. You really think that's good that you've got to, what he was describing as a minor background check to buy cough syrup for his daughter?
Right.
Like, he's as much of a child as his daughter is, that he needs that sort of parental oversight from mommy and daddy government. That's absurd. Instead of saying, well, that's kind of a ridiculous regulation to have on cough syrup.
Yeah,
or anything else.
Why don't we take away some of these cough syrup regulations?
Yeah. So it's just these arguments are just so absurd. And it blows my mind that you could sit there. A lot of these people are otherwise perfectly intelligent people.
That's what, yeah, go ahead.
And because I don't want to seem like because they have bad arguments about this, that they're just blithering idiots.
But they did have about 50,000 hours in public school. You
Yeah.
think they'd learn how to think? Or
yeah. I mean,
make an argument or go look up something before you have an opinion on it.
Right.
But when you're told what to think all day and you just repeat it, it's kind of hard to think for yourself.
Yeah, it's just people have blind spots. Probably because they went to public school their entire lives.
Most likely.
Yeah. So, did you have anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we covered it. I mean, we got our Eagles plug in.
I got to talk about hockey.
Champions. We got to talk about hockey. You mentioned the tractor. So we covered all the important issues.
Yeah, and we talked about how much we hate gay people.
Right. We did slip that in there, right? That's implicit in our arguments because that's what we really mean.
Mm-hmm.
Lefties annoy me.
Yeah. So, free market success story.
You got one?
I do. So, Slappy and I were at a annual golf outing we go to every year this weekend. And at the place we stay at, there's like a bar restaurant where they have the hotel. And we end up eating there a lot because it's convenient. And then one night, some of us were there ordering dinner. And we got hot wings as an appetizer. And we're eating them, and some of them weren't cooked quite all the way through. We got 2 baskets of it. One was hot, one was mild. The mild, people were saying that it was still kind of pink in there. So the waitress comes back and asks how everything's doing. And we kind of say, hey, these wings over here didn't look like they're cooked all the way through. And so she, immediately took them back and said, hey, I'm not going to charge you for this. Came back later and said, how are the other ones? And I had some of the hot ones, and I was like, I mean, mine were fine, but someone else was kind of like, there was one was questionable, and she took that off the bill too. Didn't charge us for it. So, I mean, that's a business right there. It's the waitress didn't have to go back and ask the owner, hey, can I take this charge off? They understand that in order to keep people wanting to come back, if they make a mistake, they make it right to the best that they can. There was another. This was years ago. I was with some of my family. We were at a kind of local, kind of 50s themed restaurant, like burgers and fries kind of thing. And in our order of French fries, we found a fried bolt in it.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Nice.
And so we're like sitting there joking around, be like, all right, who's going to bite on this so we can sue? And I guess the waitress noticed that we were holding a bolt in our hands, and the manager comes out and he's got, looks like a ghost. And he's like, it looks like there might be a problem. And we said, yeah, we found this in the French fries. And he was extremely apologetic, gave us, a bunch of coupons and everything. So they have an incentive to keep their customers happy and to give them, little benefits here and there if they mess up, because, the word of mouth is important, especially with the internet. You can go and write a review, and those reviews matter. I mean, if they get a bunch of negative reviews, it's going to hurt their business. Whereas if they get a bunch of positive reviews, it's very helpful.
Yeah. Speaking of, a little bit of a free market story and keeping customers happy was same place this past weekend. It's a bar, I assume. Bar food's on the menu, so I sat at the bar. I didn't even get a menu. I just asked if I could get an order of chicken fingers. And because I like to eat good, I like very what's the right word? You're a food guy. I don't know, exquisite foods that are hard to find. So I order chicken fingers.
A delicacy.
A delicacy, yeah. Bartender looked at me funny, and I'm like, yeah, chicken fingers. Do you have them? Can I have
With
an order?
club sauce.
Exactly. And so she says, hang on a second, and comes back and says, yes, we do have them. I was like, that was really weird. Whatever. I got them. They were fine. Got my barbecue sauce and my French fries with them. Did the same thing for lunch the next day, and they got them for me. And then some of our buddies who were there started messing with me, go, oh, yeah, you're ordering off menu. And I had no idea because I didn't look at the menu. So I did look at the menu later and realized they weren't on there. So they very easily could have just came to me and said, we don't do chicken fingers. Of course, they did, and they made an exception, I guess. They're not on the menu.
Did you check the kids' menu?
Did they have one? Because that's where I usually order off of.
Yeah, I mean, ordering chicken fingers all the time, it might be
yeah, I love chicken fingers. Love me some chicken fingers. So anyway, she could have came back and said, sorry, we don't have chicken fingers. Do you want to look at a menu? But it's important for them to keep their customers happy. I mean, we were literally staying at the establishment. And that did make me happy. I love chicken fingers, so I had a good feeling. But whatever. That's all I had.
We should have asked them to bake a gay wedding cake for us. See how that went down. Would have had something else to talk about this episode, maybe.
I'm sure they would have refused.
Yeah. We can't make cakes here.
We don't do cakes. Ah, you bigot.
Yeah. So with that, show notes page is mcfugel.com/94. We're going to link to the Supreme Court opinion on this. So I think it's important to at least read the beginning of it. I didn't read the whole thing.
I read a lot of it.
I had a busy night tonight. It just came down today. We decided last minute to cover this topic. I think just reading the first paragraph
is good.
Is enough to at least to get you to understand. It's basically an abstract for the rest of it. Just to get you to understand what's going on in the case. One
thing I thought was funny too, by the way, when you texted me, I went on to look it up, and I saw the Drudge Report headline. I Googled it, and I saw a NPR, and I think maybe it was New York Times. I don't know. There was another one. It said like narrow decision. So I'm thinking it's a typical 5-4 decision. It was 7-2.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sotomayor were the only two who dissented. Elena Kagan, who was an Obama appointee, was with the majority. With who else? Roberts, Breyer, Alito. Who's the new guy?
I don't know.
Neil Gorsuch, and I guess Clarence Thomas. Did I miss anyone?
Jay Reinhold.
Yeah, Judge Reinhold was he was with the majority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So also you will find on our show notes page ways to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. So I realized I was only had it set to go to like the last 10 episodes, so I reset that to 50.
So now you can listen to 50 of them.
Yeah. Well, apparently it gets all wonky if you try to go more than that. So no iTunes is set up for that. I think Stitcher is not going to.
But if you join our exclusive club, we'll give you access to all of them.
Yeah, that club being the website and
YouTube.
Yeah, it's all on YouTube. I mean, or you could just go and whatever episode number you want to listen to, just mcfugel.com/whatever number that is. So make it nice and easy for you.
Yeah. Tom Woods got that idea from us.
He did. By the way, if you have a podcast or like a website or anything, and the plugin for that is Pretty Links. It's very useful. It's very helpful. Also, subscribe to our email list, and we're offering you a discount over at libertymugs.com if you subscribe to our email list. Also, if you're interested in the Tom Woods Liberty Classroom, which I am a member of, and it's awesome. When we did that Thaddeus Russell episode a while back and was talking about natural law, and we were talking about John Locke, I needed to brush up on my John Locke. And so I went into Liberty Classroom and found that there were some episodes on John Locke and natural law. And so I downloaded them, put them on my phone, and listened to them on the way to and from work. And it was very helpful and basically getting a crash course in that. And they've got all sorts of topics like that, all about libertarianism and economics and philosophy and everything else. So what we're doing is if you go over to libertymugs.com, and we've got some little advertisements there. If you use our, if you buy a subscription to Liberty Classroom through us, we will send you a free mug. So just make sure you let us know. Send us an email through, or just let us know anyway on Twitter or whatever, or through here. Let us know that you did that, and we'll send you a free Liberty mug of your choice. So that's a great deal, I would say. It's an awesome deal.
Say so.
You get a free Liberty mug.
Any one you want.
Any of you want. And even if you want one that's not there and you give us an idea.
Unless it's a communist one.
Unless it's a communist one, or unless it's an anti-tractor one, which is the same thing. If you don't like tractors, you're a communist. That's proven empirically and a priori.
I guess because the food shortage meant they used less tractors in the fields.
That's one way of looking at it. I mean, you can basically address that argument any way that you want.
Okay.
There's no way of proving it wrong. What else? Oh, our friends. I gotta find their thing. Yeah, so
against government.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Friends Against Government. Check out there. We'll have these linked there too on the show notes page. Check out our friends who do a lot of cool stuff. So the Friends Against Government podcast with Car Campett and Bird Archist, Mance Raiders, Free Man Beyond the Wall, Jeremiah Harding doing just like everything, the Peaceful Treason podcast, and the Rogue File by Dino. So check all those guys out. They're out producing awesome stuff as well.
Whenever you're done listening to our podcast, go check theirs out. It's great.
Right.
Good stuff.
And also leave us a review if you don't mind on iTunes or Stitcher. Let us know what you think about it. Yeah,
we accept them.
Have some fun with it too. So I think that's it.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Okay. So thanks for listening this week. We'll catch you next week.
Peace.